For the fourth consecutive season, the Seattle Mariners finished with a winning record. The first time they've accomplished this feat since 2000 to 2003. However, for the third time in 4 years and the second year in a row, the Seattle Mariners were eliminated from playoff contention on the final weekend of the season, and for the second time in 2 years, I feel like they could have made the World Series if they just made the playoffs. Seattle ended the season 1 game out of the wild card and 3.5 games out of the AL West. A team with incredibly high hopes heading into the season ended in disappointment once again. Now, every team has losses during their season that could have gone the other way, but there was just something about the 2024 Seattle Mariners losses that stick with me. It's not so much that things didn't go their way in 2024, but there were so many times that the team didn't make things go their way. There were so many games where the path to victory was clear and only required minimal effort from the offense to make it happen. So many games where the pitching needed to be 100% perfect to ensure victory. So many games that a normal team would win, but the Seattle Mariners have never been anything close to a normal team. 42 losses by 2 runs or less. 42 losses by 2 runs or less. Of those 42, the Mariners scored 2 runs or less 24 times. There's also another 23 losses in games where the Mariners pitching allowed 3 or fewer runs. The Mariners were 70-15 this season when scoring at least 4 runs. 15-62 when they scored less. Are these numbers historically significant? Are these numbers unique? Probably not, but they feel crappy in a special way. Only 3 teams had fewer games scoring 4 runs this season: the White Sox, Athletics, and Nationals. None of those teams had the hopes that the 2024 Seattle Mariners had. The Mariners had the second highest total number of games allowing 3 runs or less, and they had the 5th worst winning percentage in those games. The Mariners were a contender that constantly found themselves on lists like these, where the teams surrounding them on the list were some of the worst in the league. A piece of baseball wisdom, sometimes attributed to Lou Piniella, says that no matter how bad you are, you will win 60 games a year. No matter how good you are, you will lose 60 games a year. It's what you do with the other 40 that determines what kind of season you have. Well, the Mariners went 25-17 in the other 42. And it was maybe the worst possible 85-win season. Despite the many flaws in the roster, the playoffs were in reach. The division was in reach. 90 wins was in reach. Even the best record in the American League was possible. Instead, we got this. One of the most disappointing seasons in Seattle Mariners history. To try and make sense of this season, I decided to take a look back at every single loss and rank them. From the inevitable, to the heartbreaking, to the really heartbreaking, to the I hate this stupid team. It's every 2024 Mariners season loss ranked. Over the course of a 162-game season, sometimes the offense is just not going to have it. Sometimes the pitching is not going to have it, and sometimes it's going to be both of those things at the same time. It's not worth beating yourself up over. These aren't the ones you get upset about. Unless, like on September 17th, your team has the bases loaded with 1 out in the bottom of the first inning, and someone tries to steal home and fails, which changes the complexion of the entire game. You can get a little bit mad about that one. I'll also point out July 29th's game because it was one of the weirder of the season. There was a missed strike 3 call by the umpire, which led to the Red Sox scoring 7 runs. I know that sounds like cope, but it really happened. This is also a game where the Mariners scored 7 runs. The Mariners were 28-2 in 2024 when scoring 7 runs. This is one of the 2 losses. The other one is probably going to come up later, just a guess. August 13th, losing by 14 runs, probably shouldn't be this low on the list. But the context is what matters here. The Mariners were coming off their best series of the year, sweeping the Mets and in dominating fashion, winning huge on Sunday Night Baseball. They worked themselves back into a tie atop the West with the Astros. Julio was back from injury. It was time to turn on the Jets. It looked like this is when the team was going to become what they were supposed to be. Not only that, they were facing the Tigers. The Tigers had just beat them in their home ballpark 2 out of 3 games. And the Mariners should have won those games, and they should have won the other games in this series. But you thought they would play well, and you thought they would get their revenge, and you thought that they would make a move in the American League West. Instead, this is what they did. They lost by their biggest margin of the entire season. They fell 1.5 games back in the standings and would never even be tied for first place again for the rest of the year. I mean, that's a big loss. Losing by 4 runs is tough from a television viewing perspective. You don't want to turn it off because there's this play that exists in baseball. It's a play that happens all the time, and it can tie the game. But at the same time, 4 runs is not a small amount of runs, and especially not a small amount of runs for the 2024 Mariners offense, especially pre-deadline. I want to single out the August 7th loss here, though, because it was uniquely painful from a viewer's perspective. It was George Kirby versus Tariq Skubal. Skubal won that, and he goes on to win the Cy Young. But the score is still 3-2 heading into the 9th inning. And the Mariners were within striking distance if they could just hold the lead there. Instead, they allowed 3 runs in the top of the 9th and put the game out of reach. Jonathan Hernandez was charged with all 3 runs. He pitched only 3 games for the Mariners in 2024. This was probably his most important and the reason he's no longer with the team. So, thanks, Jonathan. The common denominator with these 2 games, and most of the games to come, is there is a brief moment where this team made you believe that good things could happen. September 10th, Yu Darvish and George Kirby in the Vetter Cup in Seattle. Mariners pitchers as a whole were much better at home, George Kirby especially so, with a 2.46 FIP at home and a 3.89 FIP on the road. So the Mariners having a 2-0 lead after 2 innings, that's a good start. When the Padres get in there, suddenly 3-2, you're not thinking that George Kirby's going to give up more runs. You're not thinking this game's over with, but that's exactly what it was. 2-run home run, the 6 by Machado off Kirby, sent him in the locker room. Then Austin Voth comes in, allows another 2 runs, and the game's out of reach. The June 8th window of hope was even smaller, but the Mariners had a 3-2 lead in the top of the 5th. The lead immediately evaporated in the bottom half of the inning with Castillo allowing 3 runs, and then the bullpen allowed another 3, and this one was over before you knew it. Luis Castillo didn't have his best season in 2024, but this was one of only 3 starts all season where he allowed more than 4 runs. Despite limping to the finish of the first half, the Mariners came out of the All-Star break with a 1-game lead in the American League West. Opening with a 3-game series, they had the opportunity to take control of the division once again. Instead, they managed just 4 hits against Hunter Brown and none against the bullpen in a 3-0 loss to the Astros. This wouldn't be the first time or the last time the Mariners would have their destiny in their hands and lost. It was just one of them. George Kirby against Chris Paddack feels like a win to me. Unless, of course, Kirby gives up 3 home runs in the first 2 innings. The Mariners managed to get the game within striking distance, though, scoring 2 runs in the top of the 7th to make it a 4-3 game. Cody Bolton took the 8th inning in the middle of a 6-game scoreless streak. But with 2 outs and a runner on, Ryan Jeffers hit a double to extend the lead. Another double made it a 3-run lead. And that was it. That was game. August 16th is not really an exceptional loss in the grand scheme of the 2024 Mariners season. They faced Paul Skeens Luke Raley hit a 2-run home run off of him. But that was about it. I only list this here because I'm pretty sure this is the game where Jerry Dipoto and company decided to fire Scott Service. Or at the very least, his seat started to get very hot. The team blew the large first place lead, a 10.5 game lead at one point. Then they went 1-5 against the Tigers over the past 2 weeks. The Mariners and Scott Service's job needed to right the ship in a hurry to turn the season around. They did not do that. And this game was very characteristic of what was going on with the team at the time. The Mariners had 3 errors and 3 players notched hits in this game. Something had to change. That change was Scott Service. Sunday, June 30th was a far more traditional, painful Mariners loss. The team tied it up in the 7th at 3-3. And you had to think, hey, maybe they'll pull this one off. Instead, Ryan Stanek allows a 2-run home run in the very next inning. And that's it. I think we've reached the point in the list where every single loss is almost interchangeable. A deeper look at any of these will hurt your feelings. A deeper look at any of these will make you say, oh my God, if they had just won that game, things could have been so much different. A good example of this is May 14th against the Royals. Now, based on the final standings, all of the losses to the Royals hurt, but we can count this one as exceptionally painful. Now, the injuries and underperformance of the bullpen often put the starters in tough situations. Logan Gilbert was posting one of his best starts of the season with 6 shutout innings and desperately clinging to a 1-run lead. Due up in the 7th was the top of the order for the 3rd time through, typically the most difficult task for a starting pitcher. Bobby Witt Jr. led things off and drew a walk on 8 pitches. This brought up Vinny Pasquantino, who grounded out, but Witt was able to advance to second. Salvador Perez was up next, and the Mariners called for the intentional walk. The Royals' offense was very top-heavy in 2024, and this seemed like the correct strategic move. It looked even better when Logan Gilbert struck out the next batter, Michael Massey, on just 4 pitches. The second out of the inning improved the Mariners' win probability to 71%. 71% is not 100. Nelson Velasquez took a 1-0 slider 398 feet deep to left center to give the Royals a 3-1 lead. The home run took the Mariners' win probability from 71 down to 20.1, and eventually the loss. July 6th wasn't quite as dramatic, but frustrating all the same because of how and who. By all metrics, Yariel Rodriguez was a slightly below average starter. Against the Mariners, he was a god. He threw 6 shutout innings, allowed just 1 hit, and struck out 6. His game score 2.0, where 50 is average, was 75, by far his best of the season. The worst part is, thanks to a 2-run 4-inning start by Emerson Hancock, it might not have been that bad. If not for Trent Thornton and Mike Baumann allowing 3 runs over the 7th and 8th innings, making the 4 runs the Mariners scored in the final 2 innings fall just short. The final 3 outs of the game were made by Ty France, Mitch Garver, and Dominic Canzone, a very fitting example of this part of the season and just how frustrating the offense they gave us was. These are the losses that make you question your life's decisions. These are the throw your remote losses. These are the I swear I am not watching this crap tomorrow losses. Seriously, this many 2 to 3 losses should be illegal. We'll start with June 21st. The Mariners lost the series to the Marlins at a time when the Marlins had the worst offense in all of baseball. That's probably enough to disqualify them from playoff contention right there, but this loss right here was especially depressing. The Mariners took a 2-0 lead into the 6th inning before allowing 2 to tie the game up. No more runs by either team were scored in regulation, which led to extra innings. Now, not scoring in the 10th inning with the free runner on second is always tough, and on the road, it's usually a loss. But the 8th inning here was far worse. A leadoff single by Victor Robles, who then stole second, A single by Ryan Bliss sends them to third, and then 3 straight strikeouts by the 1-2-3 hitters for the Mariners. Inning over. That's Mariners baseball. I'm throwing this Brewers loss in here because I was at this game and it was not very fun. It's probably too early in the season to really get upset about, but looking back at a missed playoff opportunity really makes you ask yourself questions like, hey, what if Andres Munoz didn't walk 5 batters in the 9th inning in April? What if it was the worst appearance of Andres Munoz's career? Now, I said earlier that every Royals loss hurt because of how the final standings played out. But the collection of losses against the Tigers were far more absurd, far more avoidable, and just awful. Here we have 2 very winnable 1-run losses in a row. Right after you lose first place is just cruel and unusual, even for the Seattle Mariners. How cruel was it? August 15th was Bryce Miller's best start of the year with a game score 2.0 of 86. 7 innings pitched, no walks, 9 strikeouts, and just 2 hits. How did his offense repay him? By letting Kenta Maeda finish the season with a 4.96 FIP and 3 other relievers hold them to just 1 hit. August 14th was Brian Woo's best start of the year with a game score 2.0 of 79. 7 innings pitched, no walks, 6 strikeouts, and only 4 hits. The offense even managed to gain a 2-0 lead in this one heading into the bottom of the 8th. Now, needing the win, and with what we know about Scott Service's Mariners tenure, he went all in on this one. He set it up for Jimmy Garcia, the trade deadline acquisition, to take the 8th, and then for Munoz to take the 9th. These were the right moves to do. These were the analytically correct moves to do. But they didn't work out. Jimmy Garcia allowed a 2-run home run to tie the game. Munoz pitched a spotless 9th, and then the offense, again, failing to score in the top of the 10th, is the same as giving up. The Mariners gave up. The Mariners lost. The Royals and Tigers took the final 2 playoff spots thanks, in big part, to their records against the Chicago White Sox. The Tigers finished with a 10-3 record against the White Sox, while the Royals finished 12-1 against them. Now you might think, hey, that's unfair. The Mariners only got to play them 7 times. Well, what if I told you the Mariners played one of the 4 worst teams in the league 13 times and outscored them by 17 runs? That sounds great, right? I mean, in theory it does. In real life, it was awful. How bad was it? I have 3 Angels losses on this page, and they aren't even in my top 4 worst losses to the Angels. Now, the Mariners started hot in their game on July 13th with a walk and 2 singles to lead things off, but the run ended there, and they ended up just 1 run in that inning, and 1 run in the entire game. A run in the second is turned into 2 thanks to an error by Luke Raley. For a normal team, that's just the opening moves of the match. That's just the beginning. For the Mariners, that was actually the entire game right there. The end. Now, September 1st hurt just a little bit more because it came at a later point in the season when the winning switch should have been turned on for this team. Caden Dana only made 3 starts in the majors this season. The Mariners, of course, made him look better than anyone. The Rangers scored 5 runs off of him. The Astros scored 5 runs off of him. And the Mariners only managed 2 in 6 innings. July 24th saw the Mariners take a 1-0 lead into the 8th inning when they called upon Gregory Santos. Acquired in the offseason from the White Sox, Santos was supposed to be one of the top 3 arms in the back of the bullpen. However, due to injuries, this was just his 3rd appearance of the season. A couple of singles led to the Angels tying the game before Trent Thornton came in and gave up another single to give up the lead. And of course, the Mariners could only manage 1 run for the entire game. The bottom of the ninth was peak, not a serious franchise, or enough is enough and it's time for a change, as the final 3 outs were made by Jason Vossler, Tyler Locklear, and Luke Raley. Sorry that you're catching strays, Luke, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. The later in the season we get, the worse these losses feel. I know that everything sucks, yeah. So wake me up when September ends. A great example, the Yankees lost on September 18th. One of the most maddening losses of the entire season in extra innings. I'm talking, of course, about the Julio picked off third play.
Runners lead, 2-2. Swing and a miss. And the ball is thrown to third and they get J-Rod. Oh, what a happenstance. Arozarena strikes out, lets go of the bat. Rodriguez trying to get out of the way, strayed too far off of third, and then the quick throw to Chisholm for the double play.
And the Yankees celebrated clinching their playoff berth right there in Seattle. I mean, what do you even say to that? A week later, the Mariners went to Houston and took a 3-run lead heading into the bottom of the 5th inning with the ace Logan Gilbert on the mound. They were in a great spot to win here. Instead, Jason Hayward, recently released from the Dodgers, hit a home run, and the Mariners ended up watching the second team in a week celebrate their playoff berth right in front of their faces. I'm going to list these next two in chronological order, but I do have them flip-flopped. September 2nd, coming off 2 straight losses to the Angels, the Mariners were in a firm win now or else mode. And they took an early 3-0 lead, 4-run inning from the Athletics, lost the lead. The Mariners tied it back up, and the teams traded zeros into the 9th inning. And then, the bottom of the 9th game, Austin Voth.
3-2, swing and a drive, deep to left. Shea has become judge, jury, and executioner.
Voth allowed 3 walk-off hits this season, but this was only his 3rd worst by championship win probability added. On September 3rd, the offense started the game hot with 3 straight hits, and they scored 2 runs. Unfortunately, that was all they ever did. They only had 2 hits after the 1st inning, and they had no more runs. The Athletics tied it up in the 4th, and then walked it off in the 9th off of Trent Thornton. The loss dropped the Mariners' playoff odds down to 4.8%. A terrible place to be with a month to play. We've reached the top 5, and stop me if you've heard this one before. On July 12th, the Mariners took a tie game into extra innings and scored a run in the top of the 10th. Okay, that is new. The Mariners in another late and tied situation, due in part to a 2-run home run from Willie Calhoun of all people. Seattle was 3 outs away from the win and called on Austin Voth after burning Munoz in the 9th. Voth threw 2 pitches, a ball and a 409-foot home run to Willie Calhoun. 5 home runs all season, Willie Calhoun. Designated for assignment in August, Willie Calhoun. By championship win probability added, it was the worst pitch of the entire season for the Mariners. At number 4, we have this August 31st game against the Angels. Now, the quality of a start shouldn't always be defined by how many outs or how many runs cross the plate. I know this, and I think that you, the viewer, probably know this too. But on August 31st, I'm not sure if Dan Wilson, manager of the Seattle Mariners, knew this. Brian Wu pitched 6 innings and allowed 2 runs on 3 hits, both solo home runs. No walks, 3 strikeouts. It's a solid outing that every team in baseball would love to get from their starter. But it wasn't a good start. I say that because nearly every ball the Angels hit in this game was absolutely smoked. That is a whole lot of red in his exit velocities. And it wasn't until the final 3 outs of the 6th inning that he got some weak contact. Now, should he be trusted in the 7th with a third time through the order penalty in play and not many missed bats? I would say no. Dan Wilson said yes. And Mickey Moniak said, oh hell yes. A 4-2 lead turns into a tie game. The Mariners offense goes into hibernation, and it's up to Andres Munoz to get the thing to extra innings. He gets the first 2 outs. He gets the first 2 strikes. He gets taken deep by Mickey Moniak. 27.3% strikeout rate, Mickey Moniak. 79 WRC plus, Mickey Moniak. A Willie Calhoun game and a Mickey Moniak game in the same season by the same team. Mariners baseball. Now, despite the walk-off, I can never shake the feeling that Brian Wu had no business being out there in the 7th inning. Had Scott Service still been managing, I don't believe he would have been. Now, Dan Wilson was a new manager and he has a different philosophy. But I really hope he learned something about the third time through the order penalty from this loss, especially as we get to a time when every loss matters. Wins in 5 out of 7 games rose the Mariners' slim playoff odds to 8.6% on September 12th. They'd mostly owned the Rangers all season, and the Rangers really had nothing to play for. This was a great spot to be in. Bryce Miller made it even better, giving the team a 4-1 lead heading into the 7th inning. The Mariners' win expectancy was at 91%. A run allowed in the 7th took it down, but by the start of the 8th inning, it was 88%. And then the bullpen and Luke Raley happened. Marcus Semien home run makes it 4-3. A Luke Raley error puts Josh Smith on first. A double by Wyatt Langford puts runners on second and third. A groundout ties the game. Then Tyler Saucedo comes in, allows a single to Nathaniel Lowe, and the Rangers take a 5-4 lead. Mariners' win expectancy goes from 88% to 26%. The Mariners offense strikes out 4 times in their final 7 plate appearances, and the Rangers win. For a lot of these losses, you could point at the bullpen, but we should never forget the Mariners struck out 1,625 times this season, the most in the major leagues. There's win now mode, and then there's you can't lose or just forget about it mode. This was the latter. This is where the Mariners were on the second to last weekend of the year, and they came to play. Brian Wu came out firing, with just 2 batters getting on base in the first 5 innings. The offense came to play with the Mariners putting up 5 runs in the first 6 innings. Before we get to what happened next, let's talk about Brian Wu. Brian Wu was not a big-time college pitcher. He only threw 69.1 innings in 3 years at Cal Raleigh San Luis Obispo. In 2022, he threw 57 innings in the minors. In 2023, he threw 44 innings in the minors and 87.2 innings in the major leagues. In baseball, Brian Wu is still a baby. He's a boss baby who can get a ton of people out, but as far as experience goes, he's lacking. Every pitch he threw by this point in the season was a new career high. It should also be said that Brian, like all pitchers, has a hard time taking on the third time through the order. In 2024, Wu had a 2.34 FIP the first time through, a 2.93 FIP the second time through, and a 7.69 FIP the third time through. Does that mean you should automatically pull him with a 5-run lead before he faces the third time through the order? Not really. Learning how to do this is going to be a key part of his development. But you should also be ready at the first sign of struggle, and there was some serious signs of struggle. He faces Travis Jankowski, gets the out. Okay, you can stay. Leota Tavares, the 9th hitter. You can face him. Go for it. He gets a single. Okay, now it's the top of the order. Do we want to think about something here? Marcus Semien, single. Josh Smith, he bats left-handed. Left-handers have the platoon advantage against right-handers. What do? Oh, let's let him bat. Okay, well now a run is scored and 2 runners are on. Maybe now we could pull him. No, let's let Wyatt Langford instead hit a 3-run home run. Are you kidding me? The Mariners still have the lead, but then JT Chargois allows another, and Andres Munoz allows a walk-off in the 9th. Game over, season over, nail in the coffin. You can blame the bullpen, but I think Bryan Woo shouldn't have been in that position. I think the Seattle Mariners shouldn't have been in the position to miss the playoffs. Is it the same? Is it different? I think it's the same. The Kansas City Royals made the playoffs, and the Seattle Mariners didn't. The Mariners had a game where they had an 8-0 lead over the Royals, and they lost. There's circumstances. There's always circumstances. The bullpen was beat up. Bryce Miller was asked to do a lot more than he would have normally been asked to do because of that. And he allowed 7 runs in 6 innings. But the Mariners were still in a great position at that point, up 9-7. They had a 91% win expectancy heading into the 9th inning. Instead, Ryan Stanek allows a walk, a single, a triple to Bobby Witt Jr. A couple batters later, Nelson Velasquez walks it off with a ground ball that is not fielded cleanly. That could have been the double play. Stanek alone took away negative 0.61% championship win probability added with this performance. But he's not the only one to point a finger at. There's a lot of reasons a team loses like this. There's always plenty of blame to go around when a team blows an 8-run lead. But just like all these losses, just like any loss in the entire season, you just have to believe your team can come back from it. No loss is any different than any other loss. You have to believe that your team can come back from it. As it turns out, the 2024 Seattle Mariners never really did.